I never thought I'd be the kind of husband who would obsess over rideshare receipts. But that's exactly where my journey began, a journey I never wanted to take, yet found myself on the precipice of betrayal. It started innocently enough, a casual glance at my phone while I waited for my coffee to brew. I opened the rideshare app, something I often did to check our shared account balance, and my gaze snagged on an unfamiliar address that had appeared multiple times in recent weeks. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe Sarah had been working late nights at the office, and her coworkers lived nearby. But as I scrolled further, the frequency of these trips began to gnaw at me, each ride a silent accusation. 5 trips in the last 2 weeks, all to the same location. My heart raced as I tapped the address, trying to convince myself there had to be a rational explanation. I could feel my stomach twisting into knots. What could possibly justify such a pattern? I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was just a fluke, a miscommunication, perhaps. But deep down, doubt began to seep through the cracks of my faith in our marriage. I thought about Sarah, her laughter echoing in my mind, the light in her eyes when she talked about her day. How could she betray me? I sat there, coffee forgotten, staring at the screen as if it held the answers to questions I was too afraid to ask aloud. I remembered the last time we had a fight, nothing serious, just a petty argument about the dishes left in the sink. We had made up, of course, but now I wondered if there had been an undercurrent of something more sinister lurking beneath our mundane squabbles. As the days passed, the address haunted me. I found myself creating scenarios in my head, each more dramatic than the last. Was there someone else? A secret life I hadn't known about? I replayed our recent conversations, searching for clues. Was that lingering look in her eyes just a trick of the light, or was it something more? I decided to dig deeper. I began tracking her schedule meticulously, what time she left for work, when she returned, and how often she seemed distracted. Each late night felt like a stab to my heart, and the more I pondered, the more I was convinced that something was terribly wrong. I could feel the resentment bubbling beneath the surface, coiling tighter with each passing day. In my mind, I cycled through various scenarios, each more absurd than the last. What if I confronted her? What if I was wrong? I couldn't bear the thought of losing her, yet the weight of suspicion was suffocating. I was caught in a web of confusion, fear, and anger. I longed for clarity, but there was only darkness. It was a Friday evening when I decided to take matters into my own hands. Sarah had gone out with friends, and I had the house to myself. I sat down at the dining table, my laptop open and the rideshare app still glowing on my phone. I took a deep breath and began my investigation. I started with a simple search of the address, hoping to find something, anything, that would help me make sense of this mess. The address led me to a quaint little apartment complex on the outskirts of town, a place I had never heard of before. I felt a surge of bile rise in my throat as I imagined her smiling, her hair catching the soft light as she entered that building. The thought of her with someone else, of her laughter echoing within those walls, shattered my heart into a million pieces. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the mental images, but they persisted. Each time I opened them, I was met with the stark truth: I had to confront her. I couldn't live in this state of torment any longer. The rideshare trips were not just innocent outings, they were the manifestation of something darker lurking in the shadows of our marriage. I didn't know what I would say when she returned. Would I accuse her outright? Or would I play it cool, hoping she would slip up and confess? The thought of her denial twisted my stomach further. It was a precarious situation, and I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. As I sat there, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me, I realized that I was no longer the man who had married Sarah. I was becoming someone else, someone desperate, someone willing to risk everything to uncover the truth. And so, as the night wore on, I prepared myself for the confrontation that would change everything. The hours dragged on as I waited for Sarah to return home. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown to a confrontation I both anticipated and dreaded. I had made my decision: I would confront her about the rides. I would demand answers, but as I sat there, my mind spiraled deeper into doubt. What if I was wrong? What if she had a perfectly innocent explanation? The paranoia gnawed at me, each thought more consuming than the last. I flipped through the rideshare app again, obsessively checking the details of her trips. The same address, the same pattern. I felt like a detective piecing together a case, only to realize that the evidence was leading me to a painful conclusion. The thought of loss loomed over me like a dark cloud, suffocating and relentless. I began to Google the address, hoping to find something that could offer me a thread of reassurance. As I scrolled through the search results, I learned that the complex housed a mix of young professionals and college students. I felt a sickening twist in my stomach as I imagined Sarah mingling with them, perhaps sharing stories over a glass of wine, laughing at my expense. The thought was unbearable. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. I knew I had to gather more information before I confronted her. I needed to be sure, or else I risked tearing our lives apart based on mere suspicion. I thought about reaching out to one of her friends, but that felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready to breach. Instead, I decided to take a more discreet approach. The next day, I took a drive to the address. My heart raced as I pulled up in front of the complex, the sun shining harshly overhead. I could see people coming and going, laughter ringing out from the small courtyard. I parked a few blocks away, trying to appear casual, but my mind was racing. What was I doing? Was I really stalking my wife? I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, forcing myself to walk closer. I lingered around the perimeter of the complex, pretending to be interested in my phone. I watched as a group of young women walked in, their laughter echoing off the brick walls. My heart sank further. I felt like an intruder in my own life, a shadow lurking in the background, waiting for a revelation that might shatter everything I held dear. After a few tense moments, I spotted a man exiting the building, his arm around a woman who looked strikingly familiar. My heart dropped as I squinted, trying to get a better look. It was Sarah. She was smiling, her hair flowing in the wind, and for a brief, agonizing moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe it was just a friend, someone from work who lived nearby. But as they walked away, I saw the way she leaned into him, the intimacy in her body language that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned on my heel and stumbled back to my car, panic rising in my chest. The images replayed in my mind, her laughter, her warmth, suddenly tainted by the reality of betrayal. I had to know more. I needed to confront her, but now, I felt unprepared, vulnerable. That night, when Sarah returned home, I could hardly look at her. I pretended to be engrossed in a movie, but my mind was racing, battling between the urge to scream and the need to stay calm. She walked in, her cheeks flushed from the cold, and I feigned a smile. "How was your day?" I managed to ask, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside. "Busy, but good. Caught up with some old friends," she replied, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. I wanted to believe her, but the nagging doubt wouldn't let go. I watched her as she moved around the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine, laughing at something on her phone. Was it possible that she was leading a double life? I had never imagined that the woman I loved could be capable of such deception. My mind raced with questions. What was I missing? Had I been blind to the signs, or had she become a master of disguise, hiding her true self beneath a veneer of normalcy? As the night wore on, I felt the tension between us growing, a silent storm brewing beneath the surface. I knew I had to act before this gnawing suspicion consumed me entirely. I needed to confront her, but how could I do that without sounding accusatory? What if I was wrong? Finally, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the silence stretching between us, I took a deep breath and spoke. "Can we talk?" The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. She looked at me, surprise flickering in her eyes, and nodded slowly. The moment I had been dreading, and yet desperately seeking, was about to unfold. As I prepared to dive into the depths of our relationship, I felt a mixture of fear and resolve. I would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The air felt electric as I shifted on the couch, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. I could see the confusion in Sarah's eyes, the way her brow furrowed slightly, the way she held her wine glass as if it were a fragile piece of glassware that might shatter under the weight of my questions. "About what?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity. I hesitated, the words threatening to choke me. How could I articulate the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me? How could I lay bare the suspicions that had taken root in my mind like a malignant tumor? "About us," I finally managed, my voice steady despite the chaos within. I searched her face for signs of understanding, for any indication that she might sense the gravity of the conversation we were about to have. But all I saw was innocence, and that only fueled my resolve. "Us? What do you mean?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as if trying to decipher a puzzle. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I've noticed some things lately," I said, my voice wavering slightly. "The rideshare app, the trips to that address." I watched as her expression shifted from confusion to something else. Was it fear? Guilt? "What trips?" she asked, her tone suddenly defensive. I could feel the tension crackling in the air, a palpable force that threatened to consume us both. "The ones to that apartment complex," I pressed, my heart racing. 5 trips in the last 2 weeks, Sarah. What's going on?" Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of panic cross her face before she masked it with a forced smile. "Oh, come on, you can't be serious. It's just a coincidence. Maybe I took a different route home or—" "Stop!" I interrupted, the frustration spilling over. "This isn't a coincidence. You're avoiding the question. Who've you been seeing?" Her face paled, and I could see the gears turning in her mind, searching for an escape, a way to twist the narrative back in her favor. "I swear, there's nothing to it. You're overreacting." The desperation in her voice stung, a reminder of the love we once shared, now tainted by suspicion. "Overreacting?" I echoed, incredulity spilling from my lips. 5 trips, Sarah. To an unfamiliar address. How can I not react to that? You're hiding something from me, and I need to know what it is. A heavy silence fell between us, thick with unspoken truths. I could see her mind racing, weighing her options. Did she think she could spin this into something innocent? Did she believe I would simply accept her words at face value? "Okay," she finally said, her voice quieter now, almost defeated. "I'll admit, I've been going to that address, but it's not what you think." My heart raced as I leaned forward, eager for the truth, yet terrified of what it might entail. "Then tell me," I urged, my voice steadier than I felt. "What is it?" "It's a friend's apartment," she confessed, her eyes darting away from mine. "I've been helping her with some personal stuff. She's going through a rough time, and I didn't want to worry you." Relief washed over me momentarily, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. "A friend? Why didn't you just tell me? Why the secrecy?" "I didn't want to add to your stress," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "You've been so busy with work, and I thought it would be easier this way." "Easier?" I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the silence of the room. "This isn't easier, Sarah. You've been lying to me. Do you think I'm just going to accept that? You could have told me the truth." She looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I didn't mean to lie. I didn't want to make it a big deal. I thought you'd understand if I explained it later." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "So you thought sneaking around was better than just being honest? That's not how a marriage works, Sarah." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I really am. Please, you have to believe me." But her words felt hollow, like echoes of a truth I desperately wanted to grasp but couldn't reach. I wanted to believe her, to trust her, but the seed of doubt had already taken root. The image of her laughing with someone else, sharing moments she had kept from me, gnawed at my insides. "Who is she?" I pressed, my voice low, almost a whisper. "What's her name?" "Her name is Jessica," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's a colleague from work. I promise, that's all it is." "Just a colleague?" I asked, my voice rising again. You expect me to believe that? You've been going to her apartment without telling me, and you expect me to just accept it? Tears spilled down her cheeks, and I felt a pang of guilt for putting her through this. But I was drowning in my own turmoil, and I couldn't pull back now. I can't just ignore this, Sarah. I need to know if you're telling the truth. I swear, I am. I would never cheat on you, she pleaded, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. I recoiled, feeling an ache in my chest. Then why didn't you just tell me? Why all the secrecy? My voice cracked, and I hated myself for letting this conversation spiral into a battlefield of emotions. I thought I could explain it away, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it would be a small thing, and I could just tell you later. As I looked into her eyes, I could see the fear, the shame, the realization that our marriage was hanging by a thread. I wanted to believe her, but the weight of her actions loomed heavily over us, casting shadows on our once bright love. Sarah, I need time to process this, I finally said, my voice trembling. I don't know if I can trust you right now. The silence that followed was deafening, a chasm opening between us that felt insurmountable. I watched as her expression shifted from desperation to resignation, the reality of our situation crashing down around us. As I turned away, I could feel the tears stinging my eyes, the heartache threatening to consume me. I had confronted her, but the truth was still elusive, a specter hovering just beyond my reach. In that moment, I realized that the road ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, and I had no idea where it would lead us. The night stretched on, heavy with silence and unspoken words. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts that refused to quiet. The confrontation had left me feeling hollow, as if a part of me had been ripped away, and I was left grappling with the remnants of what we once had. Sarah lay beside me, her breathing soft and even, but I felt a chasm between us that seemed insurmountable. I turned on my side, stealing glances at her, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains. She looked so peaceful, so innocent, and yet, I couldn't shake the image of her with someone else. The laughter that had once filled our home now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the cold reality of betrayal. What had I missed? I replayed the last few months in my mind, searching for signs I might have overlooked. The late nights at work, the sudden need for more me time, the vague references to friends I had never met. Had I been so wrapped up in my own world that I had failed to see her slipping away? I remembered our last vacation, the way we had laughed and danced under the stars, the intimacy we had shared. But now, those memories felt tainted, like a beautiful painting marred by a single, dark brushstroke. I wondered if she had been thinking of someone else during those moments, if my love had been a mere facade, masking the truth that had been festering beneath the surface. As the hours wore on, I thought about the life we had built together. We had shared dreams, aspirations, and countless memories. But now, all of that felt fragile, as if it could shatter at any moment. I felt anger bubbling beneath the surface, anger at her for betraying my trust, and anger at myself for allowing this to happen. What had driven her to this point? Was it something I had done, or hadn't done? I couldn't help but wonder if I had taken her for granted, if I had become complacent in our marriage. The weight of regret settled on my shoulders like a heavy cloak, suffocating and relentless. The next morning, I woke up to an uncomfortable silence. Sarah was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in front of her. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her face, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of warmth. But as I approached, the reality of our situation crashed back down, and the warmth dissipated like mist in the morning sun. "Good morning," she said, her voice tentative. I nodded, unsure of how to respond. The air felt thick with unspoken words, and I could sense her anxiety, the way she fidgeted with her coffee cup, her gaze darting around the room. "Can we talk?" I finally asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. She nodded, her eyes wide with apprehension. "I'm sorry about last night," she began, but I held up my hand, cutting her off. "I need to understand, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "I need to know how we got here. What led you to keep this from me?" Why didn't you just tell me the truth? She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with tears. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it on my own. Jessica was just a friend who needed support, and I thought if I kept it casual, it wouldn't be a big deal. I thought you'd understand. But the truth is, it is a big deal, I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. You could have talked to me. I would have been there for you. Instead, you chose to hide it, to lie. That hurts more than anything. I know, she whispered, her voice breaking. I was scared. I didn't want you to think I was unfaithful, and I didn't want to burden you with my problems. I thought I could manage it without dragging you into it. By sneaking around? I shot back, disbelief flooding my veins. You think that's managing it? You've created a wall between us, Sarah. And now I don't know if I can trust you again. She lowered her gaze, the weight of my words settling between us like a heavy fog. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, caught in her own web of lies, but it was hard to reconcile that with the pain she had caused me. I never wanted to hurt you, she said softly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I love you more than anything. I didn't think it would go this far. Love isn't just about feelings, Sarah. It's about trust, honesty, and communication. You broke that trust. I paused, taking a deep breath as I tried to gather my thoughts. We need to figure out where we go from here. I can't pretend everything is fine. I need space to think. She nodded, her shoulders sagging in defeat. I could see the devastation in her eyes, and it mirrored my own. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the distance between us felt insurmountable. As I stood there, I realized that this moment was a turning point. We could either choose to face this together, to rebuild what had been broken, or we could continue down this path of resentment and distrust. But the thought of starting over felt daunting, like trying to climb a mountain with no clear path in sight. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, my mind racing with possibilities. I thought about all the moments we had shared, the laughter, the love, and the dreams we had built together. But now, those memories felt like shards of glass, cutting into my heart with every recollection. As I tried to focus on work, I found my thoughts drifting back to her laughter, her warmth, the way she had always been my rock. But now, the foundation of our relationship felt shaky, and I wasn't sure if it could withstand the storm that had just swept through our lives. I needed to take a step back, to evaluate what I truly wanted. Did I want to fight for our marriage, or was it time to let go? The answers eluded me, and as the sun set, casting long shadows across our home, I felt the weight of uncertainty settle in my chest. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face them. But one thing was clear, I had to confront the reality of our situation, and that meant making choices that could change everything. The days following our confrontation felt like an unending cycle of tension and uncertainty. I moved through our home like a ghost, haunted by the memories of what once was and the specter of what could have been. The laughter that had once filled our space was replaced by a heavy silence, a palpable reminder of the rift that had formed between us. Sarah tried to reach out, attempting to bridge the chasm that had opened up between us, but I found myself withdrawing further. Each time she approached me, her eyes filled with hope and fear, I felt the walls I had built in my heart grow thicker. I wanted to forgive her, I wanted to believe that we could work through this. But the betrayal lingered like a bitter aftertaste, refusing to fade away. I immersed myself in work, using it as a distraction from the turmoil brewing at home. I found solace in the routine, in the predictable nature of my job. But even there, my mind wandered to the unspoken conversations, the lingering doubts that clouded my thoughts. I found myself questioning every decision I made, every interaction we had shared. Had I been oblivious to the signs, or had she masked her intentions so well that I had simply missed them? One evening, as I returned home from a long day, I was greeted by the smell of dinner wafting through the air. Sarah had cooked one of my favorite meals, the aroma of garlic and herbs filling the room. I paused at the entrance, my heart aching at the sight of her bustling around the kitchen, her hair pulled back, a determined expression on her face. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice brightening the atmosphere. I forced a smile, but it felt strained, like a mask I was wearing to hide the pain beneath. "Yeah," I replied, my voice flat. "How was your day?" "Busy, but good." "I thought we could have a nice dinner together," she said, her eyes sparkling with hope. I sat down at the table, and as we began to eat, the silence felt suffocating. I could see her trying to engage me, asking about my day, my plans for the weekend, but I felt like I was in a fog, unable to connect. Each question felt like a reminder of the fracture in our relationship, and I struggled to find the words to reassure her that everything would be okay. "Can we talk?" she finally asked, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded, bracing myself for another round of difficult conversations. "What do you want to talk about?" "I know things have been tense between us," she began, her voice soft. "And I just want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I love you, and I don't want to lose you." Her words stirred something within me, a flicker of hope amidst the despair. But doubt quickly followed, and I felt the familiar weight settle on my chest. "It's not that simple, Sarah. You can't just say you love me and expect everything to go back to normal." "I know that," she replied, her eyes pleading. "I'm not asking for that. I just want to work through this together. I want to be honest with you, and I want to regain your trust." "Trust takes time," I said, my voice firm. "It's not something you can just rebuild overnight." "I'm aware of that," she said, her voice steady. "But I want to try. I want to show you that I'm committed to us, to making this work. I'll do whatever it takes." I watched her, searching for sincerity in her eyes, but the doubt lingered. "What does that look like? What can you do to prove that you're serious about our marriage?" "I'll share my phone with you, my messages, my schedule. I'll be transparent about everything," she said, her voice earnest. "I'll cut back on time with Jessica if that's what you want. I'll do anything to show you that I'm here for you." Her offer hung in the air, a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Part of me wanted to grab hold, to believe that we could navigate this storm together. But another part of me recoiled, afraid of being hurt again. "I appreciate that," I said slowly, "but I need time to process everything. I can't just jump back into things like they were before." "I understand," she replied, her shoulders sagging slightly. "I just hope you'll give me a chance to prove myself." As the days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with the painful reality of our situation. I wanted to believe in Sarah, to trust her again, but the shadow of her betrayal lingered like a dark cloud. I began to notice subtle changes in our interactions. Her attempts to connect felt genuine, but I remained guarded, unwilling to fully let my guard down. I started to keep a journal, a way to process my thoughts and feelings. Writing became my refuge, a place where I could pour out my emotions without fear of judgment. I documented the good moments, the laughter we shared over dinner, the quiet evenings spent watching TV together, but I also recorded the moments of tension, the lingering doubts that crept in like unwelcome guests. One night, after a particularly heartfelt conversation, I found myself reflecting on the love we had once shared. I thought about the way Sarah had looked at me when we first met, the way her laughter had filled my heart with joy. I realized that despite the pain, there was still a flicker of love left within me, a desire to fight for what we had built together. But the question remained, could I truly forgive her? Could I let go of the hurt and allow our relationship to heal? I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps we could find our way back to each other. As I lay in bed that night, I turned to Sarah, who was already asleep beside me. I reached out, brushing my fingers against her hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. We were still standing on shaky ground, but I realized that perhaps we could build something new from the ashes of our past. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try, if she was, too. The morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. I woke up to the sound of Sarah moving about the kitchen, the familiar clinking of pots and pans, a comforting reminder of the life we had built together. As I lay there, I felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Today, we would finally have a conversation about our future, about what moving forward would look like after the storm that had rocked our marriage. I got out of bed and made my way to the kitchen, where Sarah was pouring coffee into 2 mugs. She looked up and offered me a tentative smile, her eyes still tinged with the remnants of worry. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice warm and inviting. "Good morning," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I took a seat at the table, watching her as she placed a mug in front of me. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and for a moment, I allowed myself to bask in the familiarity of our routine. "I've been thinking a lot about us," I began, my heart racing. "About what we need to do to move forward." She nodded, her expression serious, as if she were bracing herself for whatever I was about to say. "I've been thinking about that too. I want to be honest with you and do whatever it takes to rebuild our trust." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and right now, I feel like we're standing on shaky ground. I need to know that you're committed to making this work, not just in words, but in action. "I am," she said earnestly. "I'll be transparent about everything. I'll share my phone, my messages, whatever you need to feel secure." Her willingness to be open was a step in the right direction, but I knew that actions spoke louder than words. "It's going to take time, Sarah. I need to see that you're truly committed to this. That you're not just saying what you think I want to hear." "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "I don't expect you to just forgive and forget. I know I've broken your trust, and I'll do everything I can to earn it back." We spent the next few hours talking, laying bare our feelings and fears. I expressed my hurt, my confusion, and my anger, while she shared her regrets and the reasons behind her choices. It was a difficult conversation, filled with tears and moments of vulnerability, but it felt like a necessary step toward healing. As we talked, I realized that while the pain of betrayal would linger, it didn't have to define us. We could choose to learn from this experience, to grow stronger together rather than allowing the darkness to consume us. "I love you, Sarah," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "But love isn't enough if we can't trust each other. I want to fight for us, but I need to know you're in this for the long haul." "I am," she said, her eyes shining with sincerity. "I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm committed to our marriage. I want this to work just as much as you do." As the days turned into weeks, we began to navigate our new reality together. Sarah made a conscious effort to include me in her life, to share her thoughts and feelings openly. I found comfort in her transparency, and slowly, the walls I had built around my heart began to crumble. We started going to couples therapy, a decision that felt daunting but necessary. Each session was a journey into the depths of our relationship, forcing us to confront the issues we had avoided for too long. It was uncomfortable at times, but it also provided us with tools to communicate more effectively, to understand each other's needs and fears. As we worked through the process, I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, the laughter in her eyes, the warmth of her touch. It was as if the betrayal had cast a shadow over our love, but with each passing day, the light began to break through, illuminating the path ahead. I realized that healing wouldn't happen overnight. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, and reminders of the pain we had endured. But I also understood that we had the power to choose how we responded to those challenges. Together, we could rebuild our foundation, brick by brick. One evening, as we sat on the couch, sharing a quiet moment, I took Sarah's hand in mine. "I know we still have a long way to go," I said softly. "But I believe in us. I believe we can come out stronger on the other side." She smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I believe that too," she replied, squeezing my hand. "Thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself. I won't take it for granted." As we sat in the warmth of our home, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. It was fragile, yet resilient, a reminder that love, though tested, could endure. We had weathered the storm, and though the scars remained, they were a testament to our journey, a mark of our commitment to one another. In that moment, I understood that moving forward meant embracing the uncertainty, but it also meant choosing love and trust every single day. It meant acknowledging the pain while also celebrating the love that had brought us together in the first place. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the room, I turned to Sarah, a smile spreading across my face. "Let's make this work," I said, my heart swelling with determination. "Together," she replied, her voice full of conviction. And just like that, I knew that while the road ahead would be challenging, we were ready to face it, together, hand in hand, with love as our guiding light.